I know. I hadn't thought about that, but you're right.
Lord have mercy.
Oh, power. Okay.
Watch it, they gonna be back up and then this gonna be me right here.
We're on it.
Good evening, and welcome to the North Rock School District Special Board Meeting and our special workshop this evening. We are very proud to have our superintendent, Dr. Gregory Pulaski, who is a proud superintendent of the North Rock School District. At this time, I would like to ask, are there any public comments? Are there any public comments? Are there any public comments? There are none. We officially call the meeting to order. At this time, Ms. Colquitt will call the roll.
Mrs. Williams?
Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Reddit?
Here. Here. Here.
Ms. Kirsten West?
Here.
Mr. Steele?
Here.
At this time, we will have the executive closed session. Executive closed session per North Rock Policy 114A, stating that private or closed discussions by the board may occur as part of a regular or special school meeting. Executive sessions may be held only for the purpose of considering employment, appointment, promotion, demotion, discipline, or resignation of an employee, or to discuss matters of pupil punishment if requested by the parent or legal guardian. No resolution, agreement, or motion considered in the executive session shall be legally binding unless the board reconvenes in public and presents the items for vote of the membership. Further, Arkansas Code Title 25, Chapter 19, Section 106.2.1 states, the specific purpose of the executive session shall be to be announced in public before going into executive session. Please join me in the executive closed session for the discussion the following matters: employment, appointment, promotion, demotion, discipline, or the resignation of an employee.
Perfect.
Okay.
Madam President, members of our Board of Education, as we begin our action item 5.1 is the employment of personnel. The superintendent recommends the employment of personnel as discussed in executive closed session.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
move that we approve the employment of personnel as discussed in closed session.
Second.
It has been moved and properly second that we approve the employment of personnel. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. So the motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President, members of our Board of Education. The next action item is 5.2, which is Rule 321 regarding fighting, the revision, and I will ask our colleague, which is Mr. Logan, who's our Executive Director of Student-Centered Services. What this proposal is, as you recall, last year in a pandemic where everybody saw an increase in fighting, we saw that here. As this academic year, we saw a little bit of improvement, and by about January, we started to see a spike again. Internally, our plan, known as Operation Step It Up, had in it about 19 different action items and steps, and one of the things that I've tasked Mr. Logan with is, number one, we got to go back and take a look at our policy as it relates to fighting. And quite frankly, we need to take a tougher stance, and that is my recommendation, is taking a much tougher stance on fighting, which is what Mr. Logan is going to present. I've asked him to meet with administrators, to meet with parents, to be able to bring this forward right now, that this can go in effect immediately for the remainder of the school year and obviously going into the next academic year. So with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Mr. Logan.
Madam President, members of our board, as you see in front of you, this is the results. We've been auditing our handbook since I arrived and just kind of taking a hard look at some things. We've had quite a few incidents on our secondary campuses regarding fighting, and we needed to really take some action, and it did need to delay, and did need to be delayed. So that is the result of kind of what we've come up with. A lot of conversation with our administrators, both K-12, and then on a specific level with our secondary campuses in regards to what they're seeing. It has become, it's almost out of hand, so we're trying to take a hard stance on it.
And so the essence of this is basically that we're obviously not going to tolerate this in our school district. We are about the business of teaching and learning and making sure that everybody, our students, our staff, are in a safe environment. So what this means is if you fight in our school, you may have an immediate change to your educational environment that may look like virtual for the remainder of the year going into next week. But immediately once that happens, there is a return to campus plan immediately, because we want to get our students back to the regular environment. However, we're also wrapped in this, no pun intended, is wraparound services, because we want to make sure it's not, if you got to go virtual, there has to be checks that we're checking on that student periodically, often, making sure if they need mental health services, making sure. So there's a whole team approach, and I applaud Mr. Logan, our administrators, of thinking through this. But here's the reality, and this is what this also proposes. If you go through that process and you fight in our school one time, and it may be a change of placement in virtual, you come back after 9 weeks and you want to choose to fight again, then there's going to be an immediate placement for the remainder possibly of the school year. And I just think my personal feeling, and I know I've shared this, we got to take a much stronger stance as it relates to fighting, and to send the message that and quite frankly, when we talk to our secondary students and so forth, and I know there's cell phones that are tied into this, there's some other stuff, but they know better. They simply know better not to be able to do that. So with that, we're happy to take any questions.
I will add one deterrent that we've talked about with the secondary principals has been our practice in regards to group fights, is that oftentimes whenever they're collecting evidence and they're doing their research, they find that they're hearing students on recordings saying, hey, I'm not going to jump in there because we know that if it's more than two, then this is what's going to happen. So in essence, we feel that once word is out that we're going to take this stance on this particular policy, that it will deter a lot of fighting. But if it does not deter it, we've also put the language in there, like Dr. P said, that we're going to support our students. They're still going to be our students. We're going to make connections with them. We're going to still be responsible for them. So it's not a, I hate to use the term we're not shipping them off. We are saying, if you can't come and do this in this environment, we're going to change your environment, but we're still going to support you and we're still going to hold you accountable. So you're going to check in with us weekly. There's going to be some accountability from everybody, but we're not going to tolerate it.
Mrs. Stills, did I see your hand?
Yes. How should we go about determining what action should be taken if a student, for lack of a better term, is jumped on?
Right. So the way, as we visited this policy, the way that it's written is that we would conduct an investigation that would allow a minimum, this states in a minimum of 2 administrators would review this, so that we get into understanding the difference between a student being assaulted versus a student actively participating in a fight. We would treat those different, and that's why it gives us that leeway to investigate, to look at the footage, because we've got cameras everywhere, to see did this student just try to stop this altercation from happening, or what we're seeing a lot of times is we've got kids on both sides of the fight, they're filming going into it, and it's an active fight. We obviously treat those differently than we would a kid who's blindsided just because somebody wanted to attack him.
Would that investigation reach to outside of school, social media?
Right. And that's current practice. So when I came on board and Dr. Hooper and the team were doing our expulsion hearings and things of that nature, we were always seeking out those social media profiles, because what we're seeing is a lot of it starting off campus, on social media or in the community, and then it's making its way, because oftentimes the school place is the first place where they're together, which leads to that opportunity to have that physical altercation.
I'm glad to see it. It's really out of control almost, and I think because they feel it's allowed, sometimes that it's not, rules have not been a deterrence. I guess to the superintendent, how are we going to get this information out to the parent?
It's going to go out
even to the student.
It's going to go out in a letter. We think it's important that there's a letter that we'll draft that specifically talks about here's what the change the board has adopted. And as I was listening to you, Mr. Steele, we need help from our guardians and our parents as well. And I think part of one of the recommendations is not only conflict resolution for those students. We have to do a better job of making sure that our students are making different decisions and not resorting to fighting, but being able to channel that energy. We need help from our parents as well, and that bringing them in as full partners, bringing them in and having that conversation. Because there's some incidents that we've had where, my child didn't do that kind of thing. And so, we're all in this together. And I think that, getting this out right away and communicating it is our plan for tomorrow, or if it's adopted.
That was just getting the information to the parents, and especially the kids. If it's a pledge or a signature, make sure that they understand, even utilizing our staff, that it's not going to be tolerated. It is what it is, but for them to know, some of them think it's no big deal to fight at school.
Very true.
But they fight at school more than they fight at home. Well, wait till you get to school, and that's exactly the opposite that we're trying to communicate here.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Sir?
Are there other questions?
I didn't necessarily have a question. I just had a quick comment, or maybe a suggestion also. But maybe we can have, if it's time in the day, I know we're kind of close to the end of the year, but making sure that there's maybe some type of quick assembly or some type of maybe recorded video that can play in the classroom. I don't know if they still have TVs in every classroom, but some kind of way that the message can be conveyed in a simultaneous type of way, where it's clear, concise, and it's understood. And then maybe kind of a recap, like what Mr. Steele said, where they sign their signature on there, that way that they're held accountable for what is getting ready to take place. But at the same token, to the public, we have to make sure as parents, we do our job as parents, and we make sure that we parent our children and we make them understand what is right, what is wrong, what is acceptable, what is not. And, you know, everyone sends their child, or should send their child, to learn. And we have to create an environment that is for learning. And I'm so tired of getting phone calls about fighting and issues such as that at the school. I mean, you're supposed to be learning. And if you're, you know, not doing that, then you're in the wrong place. I agree with it.
Mr. Logan, I have one question to ask
Yes,
you.
ma'am.
Oh, you weren't here, but maybe I can ask Dr. Paluski.
Sure.
Prior, when we have those handbooks, we always had the parents to sign those handbooks.
Still do.
And that means that when you come in and you think you have a debatable argument, we can show your signature that you signed it, meaning that you read it
Yes.
in some kind of way as far as documentation. And maybe with this new Rule 321, Arkansas Law 5-71-207, that there's a way that it can be documented by parent and students
Yes,
in the
ma'am.
whole, all 8,102. That's what I'm saying, and
Yes,
maybe, Dr. Paluski, you can look at that.
Sure. We'd be able to.
And that's currently still in practice, like
It is.
the acknowledgement of the handbook. What we've discussed through these conversations, because we'll present later, you know, just kind of the audit, is that we would allow some time during the first weeks of school to go over the specific changes with our students, and that will be a requirement in every, you know, it's kind of like we stop the day, and this is what everybody is doing. Administrators are ensuring that every teacher is covering this material and obtaining that signature from our parents, but from our students, but also doing something similar at the beginning of school with our open house to really make a push to let parents alike know that we're making some sweeping changes. We want you to understand what they are.
Okay, thank you. Board members? Yes, Ms. McLean?
I think this falls also into safety and security. I think when parents are looking at a school to send their children to, if there's a lot of fighting going on, they're concerned about safety for their own children. So I'm happy to see this. I have a question. Does this mean that the first time a student fights, they could get the ultimate 9 weeks? I mean, it's not like you can fight once and then we're going to let you fight again, or
So what this policy allows is that could be the case, and that's why the language of can lead to that. So that could be a possibility, but again, based on that investigation, that could not be the outcome. If it was a first time, we're talking a push and match versus a knockdown drag out, then we leave some of that, you know, for the administrators to investigate and make that decision.
okay, good, because I want the students and the parents to be clear on that the first fight
It
could result, depending on
ma'am.
what kind of fight it is.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a rubric now that is looked at, I think, that they use, or will that rubric change, or?
Specifically to fighting.
Yes.
So right now, we've got levels in our handbook, the different levels and levels of consequences that are in the handbook that lead to different types of punishments. Specifically for fighting, there's not a specific rubric, but that's something we can look at.
Page 71 of the student handbook.
But there's not a rubric for,
Okay.
Page
or how, if
71.
we're going to have administrators look at this, and they're going to have to follow some sort of sequence of things and make a decision.
Yes, ma'am.
So it's just going to be their decision.
There's elementary consequences and there's
Yeah.
secondary consequences.
Correct.
But those would be changed,
Like this
After this.
gives us the opportunity to change that.
yes. Okay. Thank you.
Up
One
to
more.
the investigation.
Okay.
One more
Miss,
short. No, she hadn't. asked
Temple,
yet.
I'm sorry, Ms.
Okay.
Temple.
Well, that just brings me to, basically for consistency, since each principal can make a decision based on the situation, but I may think that situation is a little more important than Rochelle thinks it is, so we may have a little bit different consequences. Is there anybody to have the final, to
Right,
make sure
so
that?
executive directors will, but what you'll see in here is that it requires two. So on our high school campus say, you know, this is my AP deals with it because it's me. So if she says yes, but that also requires a second administrator, that's a colleague, and then the principal, and then the executive director.
Okay.
So a minimum of 2
Checks and balances.
assistant principals are there they have to agree that this is the action that needs to take place. And that's why we wanted to do that for consistency. So we wanted to make sure that everybody was on the same page, and we're going to train and calibrate. There's
I was just
a
gonna
lot that needs to go into
professional.
going into next year. This is our immediate fix for right now, but there'll be a lot of training that goes into place this summer.
Okay, so you would, if you saw something that seemed inconsistent, you would address it
Oh,
with the
yes,
principal
ma'am.
at that time? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Logan's almost like the
Okay, Mr.
oversight
McLean.
to that.
Just one more question about this signature. If we adopt this tonight, this goes into effect
Immediately.
immediately. So how immediately will we have a piece of paper that's going to give this information, and the student and perhaps the parent also would have to sign this form and get it back? Or,
So,
is that
right, I would just say, number one, we'll do mass communication tomorrow to make sure that all students, through their email, through their parents, we'll do multiple modes of communication. I like the video idea. I might even do that myself to try to get it out. That'll be fast and quick. I think those are great ideas. And I also think it's a great idea in this case because it's almost an amendment to the book that we do need to make sure that they have something. We do have flex period. We have advisory period. Everybody has to take English. Everybody has to take math. So we think we could probably get this out pretty quickly to make sure a mini lesson on the new regulation if adopted
Okay.
policy.
And I thank you,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Logan, because I don't want to see parents taking their children out of this district because they say it's too much fighting going on.
Yes, ma'am.
And if we can eliminate this problem by doing this, I think it's a wonderful idea. And thank you.
Madam
Denise.
Chair, I
Yes.
move that we approve rule. I move that we approve Rule 321 regarding fighting.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second.
Before it's approved, if you want to add that to the amendment about the signatures, you can do that, and it will become part of the policy.
Right, as soon as we get the second.
I know what he's saying. We hadn't got the second yet, so he right. Let me say this. I'll move that we approve Rule 321 regarding fighting with the amendment that we assure that we get signatures from our parents and our students that they understand the rule.
Second.
Starting next school year
Starting
or tomorrow?
Immediately, that we work on.
So let me just make sure I have the same understanding. Once the board adopts the policy, you want to say it becomes effective immediately.
It becomes effective immediately.
And so what I'm helping to maybe process my own thinking is you're wanting that once this goes out immediately, that we have a check and balance to make sure that parents and students sign it. But just because they haven't signed it doesn't mean the rule goes into effect.
You got it. Thank you.
Okay.
And is that
And-
practical that we can get parents and students to sign it in a quick fashion, or, I don't know, I've never,
I mean, we can definitely get the information out. Now, we're all in the school business, and we know that parents don't always adhere to things we send home. So we're definitely going to do our part to make sure that they know. But as far as them taking the time to sign it and bring it back, that's not a guarantee we can make. But that is something that we will do
But
our
we
very
will
best
make
to
our
do.
best effort.
We
Okay.
could have the students sign it, though.
Right. That acknowledgement.
That would
Okay.
be something in our control because they'll have them in
Right,
the
because
classroom.
we have them in class.
Okay. It is.
It
did
hadn't been
anybody
second.
Huh?
It hadn't been second.
I know it.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second for the Rule 321 Fighting Arkansas Law 571-207 with the amendment of making sure that parents or guardian and students sign the document as proof of their,
Acknowledgement.
of this article. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
None. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lowe.
Thank you, Mr. Logan. Madam President, members of our Board of Education, action item 5.3, the superintendent recommends the repainting of Ridge Road Elementary School and Boone Park Elementary School for this upcoming summer.
Madam President,
Yes.
I so move that we accept the repainting of Ridge Road and Boone Park.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It has been moved and properly second that we accept the recommendation from the superintendent about the repairing of Ridge Road Elementary School and Boone Park Elementary School. All in favor say aye.
Repainting.
Huh?
Aye.
Repainting.
Repainting.
Repaint, okay.
Aye.
Aye.
Wait, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Those opposed? None. The motion is carried. The superintendent approves the repainting of Boone Park Elementary and Ridge Road Elementary School.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of our Board of Education, action item 5.4, the superintendent recommends the North Little Rock school towers of A and B replacement of controls.
Madam President,
Yes.
I so move that we accept the agreement between Napholtz, wrong one, that we accept the towers A and B replacement of controls.
Second.
It has been moved and properly second that we accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the North Rock High School Towers A and B replacement of controls. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. The motion is carried.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of our Board of Education, action item 5.5, the superintendent recommends the Nabholz agreement for roof access ladders and hatches.
Explain to me, please, Mr. Superintendent, why we need this again.
Sure, this is a complete safety requirement. Many of our maintenance workers, when they have ice on our buildings and they have to go in the winter, they might slip. So it is a safety. I know I've spoken with our awesome maintenance staff. And it could have been a disaster if we didn't have something like this. So certainly I'm advocating that on behalf of Mr. Ward and his entire staff to keep them safe. They literally keep this entire school system running.
Yes, and I'm so sorry you're shorthanded. My apologies. Madam President,
Yes.
I so move that we accept the Napholtz agreement for the roof access ladders and hatches.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that we approve the recommendation of the superintendent to let Nabholz agreement of the roof assessment, ladders and hatches. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. The
I
motion
do have
is
a quick
carried.
question. What is a ladder hatch?
I'll probably have Mr.
Is it
Ward,
like the thing that makes it stay up there so it doesn't slip? Gotcha, okay.
I believe. Mr. Ward, would you like to say anything to that, sir?
I don't do ladders, so I was
There
just,
are hatches as well, but some of them will be located inside the building, and some will be located outside of the building, which eliminates us having to get 30-foot extension ladders, run outside of a building, try to get everything we need up to work, and be safe with it. And this gives us just a little bit more access, something that, would give us a little peace of mind. In other words.
gotcha, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ward.
Okay.
Thank you. Madam President, members of our Board of Education, action item 5.6, the superintendent recommends rubber mulch district-wide for the materials and labor to remove old and replace new.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I so move that we accept action item 5.6 for the rubber mulch.
Second.
It has been moved and properly second that we accept the recommendation of the superintendent to approve the rubber mulch district-wide material and labor, remove old and replace it with the new. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? None. The motion is carried.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of our Board of Education, action item 5.7, 7th Street Elementary School roof replacement. And that is the quote for the old section of the building.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Oh,
One question, I
sorry.
apologize. Only because I see the Indian Hills Elementary main roof, so that was accomplished and finished, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
I just want to make sure, because I knew that was on the agenda. I knew we had already approved it, but I didn't hear back if we had finished it, so thank you for that clarification.
Yes.
Thank you, thank you. Go ahead,
Alright.
sorry.
Oh, no problem. I lost my spot. I'm sorry. Madam Chair, I so move that we accept action item 5.7 for the 7th Street Elementary School roof replacement quote.
Second.
It has been moved and properly second that we accept the recommendation of the superintendent to approve the 7th Street Elementary School roof replacement quote is in the old section that you have had. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Can I just say thank you? We've got quite a few things on the agenda tonight of getting things done. We're coming into the summer. It's just so nice, so
Okay,
nice,
thank
so nice. Thank you.
Just want to applaud
Okay.
Mr. Ward who is our acting supervisor. Him and his entire staff being very proactive, knowing what has to happen. Here it is May, getting a plan in place. So we applaud his leadership.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Okay.
What kind of cookies you want? I'll bring
Ma-
you. Or bagels.
Okay.
Madam President, members of our Board of Education, the superintendent recommends action item 5.8, which is 3.56 license, tuition, and reimbursement. This is simply under Mr. Smith's leadership working with LPPC. There's a provision in there. You have to be in the school district so many years before we'll reimburse you. This, in working with LPPC, is 1 year, and then we would provide reimbursement. So a great thing for our licensed
May I have a
staff.
motion, please?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I so move that we accept action item 5.8 for the licensed tuition reimbursement.
Second.
It has been moved and properly seconded. We accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the 3.56 license tuition reimbursement. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. The motion is carried.
Thank you, Madam President, members of our Board of Education. The final action item is 5.9, a Community Service Learning Partnership application. This is under Ms. Hale's leadership. As you know, periodically we have to get approved community service providers for service learning credit.
Madam President,
Yes.
I so move that we accept the community service learning partner with Cystic Fibrosis Foundation.
Second.
It has been moved and properly seconded that we accept the community service learning partner application .5.9 recommended by the superintendent. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. The motion is carried. At this time, we will officially adjourn and go into our workshop.
Okay. As we move into the workshop portion, moving right along, our first information item, having back Mr. Gary Logan, our Executive Director of Student-Centered Support Services, to do a high-level overview of proposed changes to the 2023-2024 Parent and Student Handbook. Mr. Logan, welcome back.
Okay.
Back like you never left.
All right. We'll get there. So, what we have, what we're presenting tonight is the results of what we've like to consider a handbook audit. Since I came on board, we've been studying. We've had quite a few meetings with mainly with our administrators. We had a parent group in last week. Got some more meetings scheduled with student groups and to do a full handbook committee. But it was important from the day I got here that we, according to our administrators and everybody here, that we needed to review some policies, which I think is why we saw the fighting policy tonight. But that's what our presentation is tonight. So that's what we're doing. We're looking into some changes. I think Dr. P and I have had quite a few conversations about the length of our handbook. Most people's handbook average about 50 pages. Ours is 147. So it's kind of hard when we talk about parents reading it. It's kind of hard for people to read. So we need to make some changes. But we wanted to start, this small, but with some big changes that we felt the need to make. So that's kind of what we're going to go over tonight, and we'll try not to bore you to death with it. So there are 4 major concerns that we bring forth tonight. A lack of behavior systems to support staff. As you all know, teachers are struggling and leaving the profession. One of the reasons that a lot of educators say that they're leaving is because of a lack of support or behavior. So we see fighting, we see things like that. That's a big item that we really need to address. So we want to look at that. Fighting, as we've already discussed. Cell phones, 21st century problem. They're not going anywhere, so we've just got to have some systems in place to best deal with them. And then last but certainly not least is our student dress code. So I will start with that support. So going into the next year, our hope, pending your approval when we bring a full handbook before you, is to move towards, and the district has already made some progress towards this. You've probably heard the term PBIS in your schools if you have students in schools, and I think there have probably been some presentations regarding PBIS. But another term, or the overarching umbrella of what PBIS would fall under, is a multi-tiered system of supports. And that, as you can see in a presentation, is a report that it emphasizes proactive and preventative strategies to support appropriate behaviors, both social and academic. So it's a matter of tiering behaviors, working towards behaviors, and ensuring that all of our students are on the same page. So the way we break that down, this beautiful graphic here, Tier 1 is it's universal. It's what everybody gets. Act 1083 required us to purchase pro-social behavior programming. So that means that every school should have a behavior program that explicitly teaches behavior. Because let me back up and say this. In school, if a student is struggling with math, then we provide them with support to help them with math. When they're struggling with English, we provide them support to do that. The one thing in schools that we don't provide them with that support has been behavior. Everything has been punitive. There are a lot of opinions out there about this, but the reality is we have to deal with the students we have. And a lot of people like to say, well, when I was in school, that didn't happen. Well, you aren't in school, and times have changed. We're not parenting or we're not teaching or educating students that were like students of I hate to use the term old, but we'll just use that. So we look at Tier 1, it's universal, it's what everybody gets. That's required, that's in law. Tier 2 is targeted. That's some of our students. So we know that not everybody's going to get it, much like math, writing, everybody's not going to get it. So they're going to need some support, and with some support, they're going to do better. They're going to make some changes. And then there's Tier 3, where it's a few students, but it's intense. And every building in North Little Rock currently has a few that require some intensive support. I'm sure you've heard from them. So that's the direction we're moving in, and what this also does is it provides, or it requires us to have some accountability. So what are we doing? It requires us to show what we're doing, how we're documenting that we don't just assume kids know how to behave. We take the time to explicitly teach them. So what that would look like on an elementary day or in an elementary week is that we have a targeted behavior for the week, and this is what everybody in the school is learning about. Your counselors are providing lessons, your teachers are providing lessons to explicitly teach about sharing or whatever that topic may be. At the secondary level, it's still that same practice, but maybe in a particular classroom or with some particular goals, so that everybody's on the same page about the targeted behavior of the week. I think probably one of our targeted behaviors that will be ongoing would be fighting. We would talk about conflict resolution. That's some of the things that we need to explicitly teach. No, many of us who are educators, we didn't go to school and we're not behavior experts, but we do have behavior experts around us, and we can adapt and learn, and that's what we are hoping to do. The next hot topic, as you probably already know about, is cell phones. So about 95% of students bring phones. This is some national data that we gathered. About 95% of students bring phones to school each day, and about 92% of them admit to using their phones during class. Every kid has a phone. We know this. What we've learned and through a variety of means is that cell phones are at the root of many of the problems that administrators have to deal with every day. This is, and I can speak specifically to campuses on this, as I've had quite a few conversations with our secondary principals, but at our middle school campus, this is a big deal. Those brains aren't fully developed, and they don't really know how to regulate, so it's a problem. So we see fights that are started in text threads and off campus. I can't tell you the number of parents that I've talked to where the incident really derived from something that took place on Instagram, or it took place at the mall, or it took place somewhere else, and then it ended up on campus, and the way that all the kids know about it is because they're using their cell phones to talk about that. And then last but certainly not least, we've talked a lot about Stop It, but what we've seen an uptick in cyberbullying over the last several years. So this is something that our administrators, our parent group really had a lot to say about, that they're really in support of considering some changes with our current cell phone policy. So the current reality, for those of you who may not know, at elementary, it states that all students are permitted to possess a cell phone, or students are not permitted to possess a cell phone for any reason during the school day. If students bring a phone for after-school activities, they're required to immediately turn it into the classroom teacher or to the office. So at elementary, K-5, they're not supposed to have them. We recognize that some of them may have them, but if you do bring it to school, you're supposed to turn it into your teacher. Whether or not that's happening, I can't say specifically, but that's what our current policy states. As far as secondary schools are concerned, students can have phones during the following times: transitions, so between classes. They can have them at lunch, they can have them before school, and they can have them after school. So students 6-12 can pretty much have their phone any time that they are not in class and it's instructional time. What we are looking at and considering, and I think a lot of the feedback that we have gotten, especially, and when we present the full handbook, I've told them that y'all are going to come and you're going to sit with me and we're going to talk about this, because we want you to I want y'all to understand. I can articulate how they feel about it, and I can articulate what we've talked about, but I want you to hear from those who are actually in the trenches, because I'm not at the 7-8 campus or the 6th grade campus all day, every day. We do deal with them quite a bit, but I want you to hear from them, okay? So what we are considering and evaluating, and obviously we'll continue to gather feedback, it probably won't be popular among our students, but that all students K-12 can possess a cell phone, so they can all have them. In today's world, it is not uncommon for kids to have phones, with safety being a major concern. You know, I've got a 12-year-old and she's got a phone, and she knows the parameters for using it, but she's got it so that if I need her or if something happens on campus, she needs to be able to find me. So we can accept that reality that everybody has them. You can possess them. The change would be that phones must be turned off and out of sight during the instructional day. So what does the instructional day look like? That's from the time that first bell rings until the last bell at the end of the day. So off and out of sight. And we've studied this and talked with some neighboring districts that have taken some hard stances on this, and it's been manageable. We believe that it's doable. We know that a policy like this in regards to policing something that everybody has is going to require a good deal of monitoring of the adults. So enforcing that policy, it's us as executive directors ensuring that our principals are ensuring that our teachers are monitoring this and making sure that everybody's on the same page and we're not allowing cell phones to be out, that they should be off and out of sight during the instructional day. There's one caveat to it, is that in the feedback from the high school campus, they feel that the lunchtime would be an appropriate time for those kids to have access to their phones. They are more mature. Phones were an issue at high school, but nowhere near the volume of feedback, or let me use this term, intensity. The intensity of the feedback from the administrators at the high school varied far greater than it did at our middle school campuses. So students 9-12 could use their phones during their lunch period, but no other time during the day. So not walking down the hall or anything like that. So that's cell phones. And last but not least, we talk about dress code and school uniforms in grades K-8. Again, I go back to the parent group that I visited with. A good deal of feedback came out. The feedback that came from that is that they are really interested in students having uniforms again. It's my understanding that this is something new. I'm new to North Little Rock. I don't feel like it's new. I feel like I've been here for a while, but that we just got rid of uniforms, but they feel the need to bring those back. I can tell you again, at the middle level, and the day I met with them, I was I'm an elementary principal, elementary person. Whenever they were talking about the issues that they have with dress code, I thought, man, y'all, it really can't be that bad. The bell rang, and they looked at me and said, "You want to go see?" So we hopped up and we went out in the hallway, and every administrator spoke to about 15 kids saying, "Hey, fix this. Hey, fix that. Hey, you need to do this. Hey, you need to do that." It's a lot. It's hard to. It's one of those topics that's really hard to police. When you get into low cut or tight fitting, and what one outfit looks like on this child versus what it looks like on this child, and the situation that we put some of our administrators into, whether it be male or female, in addressing some of these concerns. I was always leery as a building administrator of addressing a young lady about a dress code violation. So this is where we are. You all know. I mean, some of this information is probably redundant, and you know about it, and you've heard about it before. So we look at school dress code, or the reality, what happens, things we can consider, that uniforms deterring crime, that, it puts everybody at levels of playing field. And that was really the thing that came out of our parent meeting, was that our parents really felt like North Little Rock did a really good job of, I guess there was a mindset of like a passing down, like we recycle uniforms. It made it easier when we get into departments like Miss Riggins, whenever we get into supporting families, that right now we can just go buy clothes from anywhere, whereas if we were talking about uniforms, we could have a stock because we knew, and we could have a little bit. So right now that varies. So this could save everybody money, save everybody time. We don't have to get distracted by what we're going to wear every day, because, hey, guess what? We're going to slap on that nice polo and those khakis, and we're rolling out the door. So as a parent thinking about it, I mean, I've got twins, and trying to get them ready in the morning, I would love to know that they're going to put on the exact same thing every day. So it even gives an opportunity, it creates, you think about it, this was a topic that came up, when you think about it, like, so they put the uniforms on and that's alike, but the accessories, so you get to accessorize, so they have to be more creative in accessorizing. So it creates a little bit of that, hey, man, take some time to set yourself apart by accessorizing, maybe with a blinged out belt, I don't know. So just following up on everything that we just talked about, we're just at a really pivotal moment in our society and in our world, and we've got to make some changes. And I think you all know that there's some changes that need to be made here in North Little Rock in regards to the things that we just presented on. I think we're all on the same page. I know our administrators and our parents are on the same page. Our teachers are on the same page. They want the support when it comes to behavior. They need that support. It's crucial. We can't afford to lose any teachers. We need to be supporting them. So we've got to be proactive. We've got to put some systems in place to make sure we're supporting our teachers, to make sure we're supporting our parents, and we're supporting our students. Now, are these policies going to be well received among our students? No, but my daughter doesn't like it when I tell her she can't have ice cream. But she just can't have ice cream because I know what's best. And I think that's the situation where we're in, where as the adults and those who are leading this change, that it's important that our students know we're doing this because we want what's best for you. So that's the...
Thank you, Mr. Steele.
Yes, I would just, it was just a workshop, but see, the superintendent, more data on the dress code. Instead of, before we kind of go back and forth, I mean, we've been there, done that, to see more data. Was it effective? Does it make a difference? Because I remember there was times where we did it. I remember even Joe back there, Joe Quinn, was a part of that when we had game type of activity. We still probably have it, but not now at the school level as bad as it was. And I'm going back all the way to like banging in Little Rock. So I would like to see more data on that. Now, I would also like to see all parents maybe surveyed to see what they think about going back that direction.
And that's the conversation that we've had, is about surveying our parents to kind of get some feedback on this.
And
so,
my other question, will there be any type of dress code for teachers?
Well, there's currently dress code for teachers.
I mean, would it be similar to Not like not uniform
No,
type of dress
no,
code.
no.
Not
I'm here.
not
student
do's or
services.
don'ts.
No,
Not uniform. Type
I would
of
defer
dress.
that to
No, I don't think there's any proposal for our employees to wear uniforms, but there is a dress code policy for licensed and classified.
Yeah, you need that.
Yeah, and I did before. We are gathering information on not necessarily the effectiveness of the uniforms, but how many infractions are documented in each school regarding dress code violations. So we're already compiling that so that when we present the actual handbook, we can have that. So that's something I'm working with Ms. Hale on.
Thank you.
Ms. McLean?
Yes, I noticed that you have the recommendation of all students, K through 12, possessing a cell phone. And we currently have elementary cannot have a cell phone. So what would be the reasoning to let the elementary? That would be K-5, right?
Right. So I think it's a matter where policy and practice aren't aligned, and I think most of our elementary students, they currently have phones. It's just, it's not in alignment with what we're doing. It's not something we're probably enforcing to the T. So they all have them, and I think we believe that just on the feedback that we've gotten, that possession is not, and a lot of elementary kids that don't have them, and it's not a problem, but it's not, the cell phone conversation wasn't anything that came up at elementary or even the opposition of what we presented tonight.
Right. I remember that we had a presentation of the first semester, I think it was, of infractions.
Yes.
There was the data there
Yes.
for all the different things.
Yes, ma'am.
And I don't remember if cell phones
It was.
there. And
It was.
Okay, but I don't remember exactly what was on that about the cell phone infractions. That data, and I'm assuming we're going to get an update for this second semester and compare and see how that does. I would hope that when we make changes here, that we'll look at the data again next year under new policies,
Right.
so that we can see
Absolutely.
if it's helping with
Sure.
that data to decrease.
Because there should be a direct correlation between the change, the practice, the professional development, the implementation. We should see a direct correlation. Can't remember high school. We looked at all that data. I don't know why 162 infractions sticks in my head, but we can bring that back out, Ms. McLean. Put that in your weekly board report, just as a refresher.
Okay. And then I agree with Mr. Steele that I would like to see the surveys for all parents and
Sure.
all administrators, maybe. And
Yeah, it might be a good idea to our teachers, our the K through. What do our employees think? What do our teachers think? And what do our parents think? And we'll be happy to compile all that and bring that to you.
okay. Thank you. This was very good information, and to get this conversation going.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Ms. Walker?
Reminds me, we had school uniforms K through 5 in the past, correct? So we would be
Well-
adding 6th, 7th, and 8th grade for the uniforms?
Now, I
I
think it
believe-
was K8. What
It
I was
was,
told
I
was
believe it was
K8.
K8 prior to
It
the
was K8
pandemic.
prior to the pandemic.
Okay.
And then in the pandemic, I believe you all voted to
Right.
hold off.
Right.
And last year, I think or a year before, we looked at it again and we
Okay.
surveyed, and
Okay.
That's right.
Again, thank you for refreshing my memory because
Yes,
I
ma'am.
could not remember. Have we considered adding the ALE to this?
When you say
So K through 8 on uniforms, if the parents say, yes, let's go back to that, have we considered possibly doing uniforms out at the ALE, the academy?
it's not been a consideration at this point. Various reasons, but I mean that's something that we could definitely survey
Sure.
those parents specifically in regards to that.
Yeah, yeah. And then we also have a cell phone policy already.
we do.
Yeah.
Remember, we revised it
Yes.
It's quite
last
extensive,
year,
yeah.
and some of that, going off memory from the secondary, was allowing some flexibility, the before, the after, and I think what our data is showing us based on, that's where his correlation back to fighting and back to those things happening, and it's a privilege to have a cell phone. It's not a right to have a cell phone.
Sure.
So I think this year has been, hey, let's try it, and then, but it's not working as.
Right.
So sometimes I think you have to let students know what the expectation is and let them know you can have a little bit of freedom, and if you're going to take advantage of that, then we can just pull that right back.
Right. And I would say that whenever we get into comparing data, so like the cell phone data that we're talking about, we may not see a lot of infractions, but that's because we allow them to have them. And it's, again, we've got to make policy align with practice. And what that requires is us as leadership ensuring that our administrators and teachers alike are on the same page with the policies that we're presenting tonight and that we're enforcing them. So right now, I don't think that we are completely in line with policy versus practice. So even though cell phones are an issue, but think if they're an issue right now and we're allowing them, at various times in the day, what that's going to look like when we change that.
So, okay, last thing. So when we talk about uniforms, I'm assuming it's what we have done in the past, the polo shirt, the khaki or navy pants, possibly adding black pants to that, possibly thinking about any NLR T-shirt in addition to the polo shirts. Have we considered that conversation at all?
I have
We're
not
there yet?
gotten that deep
Yeah.
into the
Okay, cool.
into the.
I think it would, just off the top of my head, just revert to what we've had, but
In
we'll
the
we'll
past.
we'll look at that. Yes,
Yeah.
because that would be, parents would be used to that. They
Right.
would know. I don't think we're suggesting any major change to the what they would wear.
Right.
That would be.
Cool. I'm finished.
You too? Okay,
So, yeah,
Ms.
it
Temple?
wasn't clear to me if you meant school uniforms all the way through, but I guess we've settled that
It's
with
K-8, yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. And then I think less use of cell phones would be wonderful. But also, I know kids are not gonna like it. Obviously, they're not. But I wonder how many parents are gonna, I'm wondering what other avenues do parents have to contact their student if, instead of a text message that someone else is picking you up today.
Right.
Do they all have email addresses that a parent could send an email during the day?
They all have
to-
Google accounts and they can access.
So there's another way for a parent to contact a student during the day to get information to them that,
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So,
Mhm.
They can
okay.
call the office, right, and leave a message.
Well, that was my next thing is, I noticed that the nursing business almost doubled from the year before, and I was like, why was that? Was it a policy change that caused that? So I'm wondering, do we really want the phone calls going through the roof at the office? I was just wondering if there's another way for a parent to contact information, like someone else is picking you up, or
Right.
I got your doctor appointment.
And in most
checking you
cases
out.
like that, especially at elementary, those changes are going to have to be articulated through the office, even with the cell phone. Like, we're
I'm
not going to
thinking more high
allow.
school at
Yeah.
this one, because, we're limiting them to lunch only. So, but you verified there's another way to do that, so.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Ms. Person West.
I don't necessarily have any questions. I think that it is needed. I received a phone call this evening while I was sitting here before the meeting started from an elementary parent that was very frustrated because of a fight in the elementary school and bullying as it relates to differences of clothes and items. So I definitely think that would be the uniform policy put back in place would definitely help. And I'm all for it.
Okay.
Can I ask one more?
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have a cell phone policy for teachers? Can they use their cell phones during classroom time or not?
Okay.
I would just,
I'm here as student, so I'm not. We have a policy. I'm certain there's something there, but I don't know in detail right now what it is.
Go on, Dr. P, and then I
I'd
got
have to
one quick
I'd have to
one.
look
Okay.
in the, obviously there's an electronic use, that kind of thing. I can't quote the employee handbook, but I do believe there's a section in there. I'll be happy to find that.
Okay.
And one quick thing, Ms. Williams, if you don't mind. As it relates to, I can't remember if it was Ms. Valerie or Ms. Natalie that brought it up about ALE. I think that's a sensitive area and that's a sensitive community. However, just from observation, I think that needs to definitely be looked at as far as a particular uniform policy there. and I'm trying to make sure I word this right, because you're in ALE for a reason.
Right.
And if you're there, then you have to make sure that you understand what it is to adhere to policy, procedure, rules, and guidelines. And so you have to kind of go back and make sure that that is in line and it's followed and it's understood before you can, you know, go further in your life. So I think that should definitely be looked at specifically as far as ALE as a whole.
Very good. I would like to implement something else since you're talking about dress code.
Yes, ma'am.
I've been to the high school and I've been to the academy. They're wearing hoodies and caps. There is a policy that says you do not do this. Now, you need to check if some folk got rules. What I know, one school made their own rules, but you need to prove that in the handbook too, thoroughly. I know it's in there.
There's current
And do-rags.
policy. Again, it's our policy and our practice aren't aligning, so we've got to spend some time as a staff ensuring, because right now what they'll tell you at our secondary level is we would spend all day, every day, take your hood off, take your hood off. And I've been at the high
Well,
school
that's for
in the
leadership
morning.
on the building
Right.
part.
Yes, ma'am.
That has nothing to do with the child.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
maybe we need to be dealing with the higher ups. Who's running the building?
That's exactly what
Because to me, it's a certain image that your school has. When kids are sitting up with hoodies on, beanies or whatever they call it, we write the policy and then they don't follow the policy that the board makes. So that too, I'm asking you to
Yes,
stress
ma'am.
that a little bit more,
Yes, ma'am,
okay?
most certainly.
And the reason we do not have, you were not here, but this board is so kind-hearted. During pandemic, parents could not afford uniforms. So we chose to not have the parents put them through that stress. But now that it's a new day, people are working, got jobs, I would suggest that you work on that very seriously because, and I was thinking about the high school too, make the academy, all of them wear something. But I understand. It's the head. It's the head. If you have no head, you have dangling feet, and folk do what they want to do. So if you put it in the book, it's no excuse for it, okay? And thank you for a tremendous
Yes, ma'am.
report.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it immensely. Anybody else? Last pass over.
Well,
Y-
real
yes.
quick question, Dr. P, if you don't mind. Is there any way that you can just say no hoodies?
Most certainly, we can. The consideration, and I hear Ms. Williams out when we talk about the hoodies, and that
You
was
do
an
have a
ask.
sweatshirt,
That was an ask
but no hoodie.
at a campus. I forget which one it was, about just saying no hoodies at all. They're not allowed at all. I don't have a problem with it. I know that I've also been a part of some conversations in our community about hoodies and what they mean and how the kids appreciate it. There's just a lot of feedback, a lot of depending on where you fall with it, about why we should allow kids to wear hoodies and why the hoodie has been, why is it derogatory to wear a hoodie? Now, again, this is just me giving you information, but we did have a campus ask that, so I think that's something that we can consider. And when we talk about sending out a survey, well, most certainly we can include that and get feedback on that.
We
for
don't
sure.
need the survey if the board has already said no hoodies. You
Duly
understand?
noted. Yes, ma'am.
That's policy, and we voted for it. And if you walk into a building, it doesn't have the same atmosphere. It's like a Trayvon Martin that comes back to me, a child who lost his life. But then we don't know if it's gang related or what. So therefore, let rule apply to everybody. If we make it now, if you feel the board needs to come back and say, hey, because our initial intent was only those persons who have special religions that they have to wear their garb or their head. But the other folk, you sitting down all hunched down, we don't know who's in the building. You come in the building with your hoodie on, all pulled down, we don't know who you are. you got on somebody else's, you may very well have on somebody else's security
ID badge.
yeah, badge. It's just a no to me. It doesn't look good in school. It doesn't. It is not, to me, I think, what North Little Rock represents.
I think we're kind of talking about two different things.
Uh-huh.
I think
Yeah.
you're talking about having that hood
Real,
on.
right.
And I think you're talking about the hoodie, the whole hoodie itself. Yeah, so that's two different things I think
Yeah.
that we need to
But I
really
was just talking
look
about
at.
the wearing it. You know, everybody got a jacket with a hoodie on it.
With a hood. We all
But-
do too.
Right, I got one, several. But the point is,
Wearing
don't.
it.
It's the enforcement of the
Don't
policy that
use
we're
the
talking
hood
about.
part.
I mean, that's
Correct.
and that's and I, you know, I'm gonna give you the information that I have is that it does, not saying that it's not doable, but it is an all day task. So I also hear out I think if we're gonna look at something moving forward based on what I'm getting feedback from administrators as to what they're dealing, do we want them spending the whole day policing hoodies, or do we want them in classrooms providing feedback to teachers and, you know, that instructional leader? So is it best that we just ban hoodies altogether? Because that's going to be, if you want Gary Logan's opinion, that's going to be my opinion, or my recommendation is to say none, because the amount of time that they spend enforcing this takes them away from so many other things that are going on during the day.
That's true. Hey, but I'm gonna ask you this question.
Yes, ma'am.
Where does the teachers, who does the handbooks on the teachers?
So that would be the employee handbook. That would be the employee handbook that
Employee
Mr. Smith.
handbook. Well, you handle that book too?
No, ma'am, I'm student services. student
Because
services.
the big question comes up with students. I can wear what I want to wear. You look at that teacher, what she got on.
Right.
And we need to be consistent. Teachers aren't wearing things professional anymore. They just
Some.
come at you.
Some.
Ah,
Some.
what is it?
Some of them.
So just saying some are not.
Now some, that's what I'm saying. We got some. I didn't say all, because some of them be coming in there like fashion models. But then we got those who need to think twice before they walk out that door. Kids say, well, why should I come like this? You telling me what to do and look at the teacher. We just said, the only thing we've ever said, just come to school looking nice. That's all.
Professional.
what
set
nice
set the
is.
expectation. Madam President, if I may, just to Ms. McLean's question, you asked, I found it. January 19th of 2023, we presented the first quarter data for the high school. It had the highest category of 206 incidents, possession and use of cell phone and other electronic device.
Wow. Was dress code on there by chance, since you have it brought up?
It is. I'll screenshot this and make sure you get it. Again, this was first quarter data, so
I'm on with
Well,
a hammer smash.
Why
So-
are we letting elementary kids have phones? That's what I'm saying. Because when they get to the elementary, you know, they're constantly on computers and their other books. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Why is the need for that?
The thought is that it's a matter of safety, you know, and we deem elementary K-5. So, you know, my fifth grader at fifth grade had a phone, so that access. I don't think it's not a topic that I feel like that is going to stress us out if we say none, if we keep the policy the same at elementary. But I also know, I believe that it also wouldn't be an issue if we allowed them to possess, because that's currently what they're doing in elementary. A lot of them are walking to school, riding the bus to school. They know because they're elementary kids and they still listen. Hey, keep this in your backpack. Don't turn it on. They don't get it out. They don't use it, but they have
Possess
them.
it.
They have them.
Okay,
Even in
just ask a
kindergarten.
question.
Yes, ma'am.
So my nephew is here in the school district. He's a third grader. He walks home. He's got a cell phone.
Okay.
It's in his backpack. We keep it on a low ringer, but it has the GPS in it, where if anything happens, we can at least hopefully find him and assist the police in finding our child quickly. So,
Okay.
yes.
All right. Just a question. If there's nothing else on this, I'm sorry, Ms. Temple.
Just real quickly, when we changed the uniform during COVID, there were a lot of parents who were unhappy because they didn't have any heads up, and some had already bought uniforms and all that. So we want to give parents as
Right.
much heads up that we may go to a uniform as possible, please.
And that's why we're starting this conversation now. But and we did get that. I got that feedback. The team has been courteous to let me know, hey, when this change was made, it was, you know, the timing wasn't the best. So we'll
Bring
definitely.
the data so we can vote on it, and then everybody be in uniform. That may help some of the fight in the buildings. You know, when you look good, you act good. Okay. Are there other questions? Dr. P, would you like to answer that?
No. I just want to thank Mr. Logan for his leadership in tackling
Mr.
the
Logan.
Good job.
the employee or the parent-student handbook and meeting with our administrators and parents.
Next, Dr. P.
Yes, ma'am. Madam President, members of our Board of Education, we want to welcome back Mr. Joe Quinn as I know we've kind of had taken a break. We had some other major items that we had to tackle, so we're gonna just a little refresher on a newer topic, not a newer topic, but highly effective 8 habits of highly effective school boards put out by the National School Board Association. But I'm just going to turn it over to Mr. Quinn. We're just going to do a light version tonight, but and I think the board has appreciated smaller, more frequent, but smaller sessions in our professional development. Mr. Quinn, welcome back.
Thank you. I know it's late. I will try to do 20 or 25 minutes. I will start with this thought. 2 years ago, when we were doing some focus groups, I sat here in the middle of the afternoon with a group of employees, teachers, all cross-section of employees, and over, the issue came up that the teachers needed more support on discipline issues. And when they had a problem in the classroom and they sent the problem to the office, it came right back at them. But I would point out that tonight, you're talking about discipline in really 3 contexts. What are kids wearing? How does that affect discipline? Do they have access to their phone? And how is that affecting discipline? And then what is the fighting policy? And a couple of people said tonight they think it's okay to fight at school. So I think you are sitting here tonight addressing what teachers have talked about for a long time, and I think that's progress, that you're addressing very real issues that teachers have talked about for years. So good for you. 2 other thoughts. I see an empty room. You know, boards take heat. Oh, I didn't know about the dress code. Oh, you didn't tell me you were going to change the phone policy. You didn't tell me this. You didn't tell me that. But here we sit with rows of empty seats. And I just, as your consultant, your loyal consultant, but also as a former 6-year school board member, I'm always aware that there's this tendency to say, why didn't you tell me that? But when you do work sessions to really dig into it before you come back later and vote on it, or do work sessions so the staff can get a feel for where you are and what should be included in what they bring back to you for a vote, it is very often in front of an empty room. And the other observation, just sitting in the back tonight, which I think in America right now, in the state, we're having daily, big, long, complex discussions about what people think are education issues. But as I sit here tonight, I see a typical school board talking about dress code, phone use, the routine repair of buildings. This building needs a roof. This building needs to be painted. These emergency ladders need to be fixed. That is the school board work that I find most people in Arkansas or America don't understand. That's what you do. And somehow I think the complexity of, I mean, look, you could spend 3 hours on this. If you do decide to change the dress code, the complexity of communicating that to the community that's a complex proposition. The emotion that would come with changing the phone policy is a complex proposition. And I think that's where school boards are sort of unappreciated, that the real nuts and bolts work of being on a school board is what people don't think about. Far more than the occasional social issue that comes to the board. So just some thoughts from the cheap seats tonight as I listen to what you're dealing with. I would just say this, the discussions we have had previously on the work I have done for you have been sort of larger, philosophical, where the board is, where a board should be. And tonight we're going to look at 4 guidelines for highly effective school boards that I think are much more specific and in some ways are just things that are easy to sort of check yourself against how it should be. And then one of them regards communications, and I think, and I'll get to this, I don't think communications has ever mattered more to school boards in Arkansas than it does right now. The other thing, there's a report that we pulled a lot of this out of that we will send you, and the report makes the point over and over and over that school boards do policy, superintendents do logistics and specifics, which is true, and it is easy to say that, but I've been around communications my whole career. You got a lot going on. Like, I've really never seen an organization where, for a cadence now of close to 12 weeks, you've had something big every 2 weeks, and it's really unending right now. So it's easy to say you should worry about the policy, but there's a lot of day-to-day stuff that's attracting community interest and news coverage. You've got a lot to deal with. The bats at the high school, 7th Street Elementary. There was an interesting piece in the Democrat Gazette about 7th Street Elementary. Tornado damage, the air quality at the school issue that brought a lot of news coverage. School security issues, which we touched on tonight in many ways, and the teacher pay issues that the whole state is talking about, as each school district will now be handed additional funding, and basically, as we often do, it comes back to the school boards to figure out the details. This is not an easy time to be a school board member. Remember the good old quiet days where you'd kind of do the meeting and go to the basketball game and wear the sweatshirt, and it was a fairly, it used to be a very different proposition to be on a school board.
North Little Rock.
What?
What'd you say?
Not here.
Oh.
Always issues.
Create a vision of high expectations and clear goals. Some of this we have touched on, but I think goals really matter. Setting goals, and then there are goals that should be non-negotiable, like the really important goals that you think are absolutely critical, board alignment, and then monitoring progress. We just had a moment a few minutes ago where Dr. Paluski pulled out a data point from January, so I think data points like that matter a lot in the context of whatever you are discussing today. Needed resources, and sort of something we have touched on where I think you've made huge strides is if the goals are being set up correctly, it becomes easy to do the annual evaluation of the superintendent at the end of the year. And I think you've really made huge progress here. You've taken the fuzziness out of what we expect from the superintendent. So goals lead you to that, and I think that matters a good deal. This was an interesting one, and Dr. Paluski is going to send you the report that tonight comes out of, but creating shared beliefs and values about what is possible. So when I was reading this report, I saw that, and I'm, okay, what does that mean? It actually, in this report, means something very specific, which I think this is a really relevant point for a lot of school boards. Don't confuse challenges with excuses. Poverty and lack of parent involvement are challenges for the district and should not be or ever be considered excuses. And some boards tend to point to external pressures as reasons for lack of success. I had been working with Dr. Paluski for a while, and I walked in his office late one day to sort of do a session together, and he seemed a little off and shook his head. I said, "You okay?" And he said, "Well, I was in a meeting earlier today where we were talking about something, and someone said, well, we're North Little Rock. In other words, exactly this, like the expectation was too low. And not only was the expectation too low, but someone verbalized that in front of the new superintendent. It's probably not what any new superintendent wants to hear. I thought of that story the other night when I was sort of putting these slides together, but I think this is relevant. And, community issues, if you're going to tell people they have to go buy uniforms, I mean, there's sort of a lot to think about in sort of everything you do right now. But I did think this was an interesting point about expectations. We've talked about this a fair amount. Less time on operational, more on policy development. Again, that is easy to say, fairly easy to discuss, but you have a lot of day-to-day operational right now. I mean, you do. And I think you said you had a call tonight or an email or a text while you were sitting here, a mom saying, there was a fight at school today, I'm bothered, irritated, scared, and then, you've got to convey that to the superintendent. So again, I think it is fairly easy to say you should be worried about the policy, but I think the reality of being a contemporary school board member is you're hearing from parents. And that some ways is easier said than done. These are some points we have talked about before. driven by accountability. Student achievement is the board job. Day-to-day life is the administration. Don't micromanage, which I think, from when I came along 2 or 3 years ago, like, you really have moved away from the micromanagement business. Yeah, I mean, you really, I think, are in here talking much more about the big picture. And I think one way to check yourself is on any board agenda, how much is policy and how much is you're just approving the new roof or the paint job for the school over the summer. The next point is a culture of communication. This is what I really like to spend a few minutes on tonight. Culture of communication for internal and external audiences. I believe you now have a story to tell. You hired a dynamic new superintendent. How long's it been?
Going on 3 years.
3 years?
3 years, 3 academic years.
I find that really hard to believe that 3 years have passed. You hired a superintendent. You changed the culture of the meetings. I think you changed the culture that the board was sort of squabbling over things, and you've supported your superintendent. And you said, we have our guy. Now, what do we do to build around him? And I think that has been real progress. And now I think there's a story to tell, because I think you are actively and aggressively working to make this a better district. And now you start to see a story come into focus. I think you have to define concrete examples of success. In-depth policy briefings, I think you need to think about for teachers and staff. But look, it's always easy to be the consultant and say you should do this and this, but you also have staff realities, budget realities, time realities to say, oh yeah, well, let's do this different kind of briefing for the staff. When, as was just pointed out, if you change a hoodie policy, is that going to turn into someone's full-time job, checking those in the hallway? So again, as a 6-year school board member and a guy who's been around policy and communication my whole life, I'm very cognizant of not making things sound easy. I think video and digital tools define communication problems as you define solutions. This is my one big thought for tonight. If you take one big thought away from tonight, this is it. You need to tell your parents why they should send their children to this district, and that's never been more important. It is not my job as your consultant to whether vouchers are good or bad. That's not my role. I think it is my role as a consultant that has come to love this work with you and care about the district and care about you, which is parents are going to suddenly have more choices. They are your customers. Parents and their kids are your customers. And it's no different really than selling shoes or selling shirts or selling cars. You got to sort of, how are you communicating with the customers? They're going to have the voucher option, which could be, $6,800 a student. I don't think people really understand what that means in this state right now, but if your child is at a private school, or here's your check, or they're in a public school and they want to go to a private, here's your check. And you're in a city, again, I'm being very careful here not to say that anything is my opinion. I'm just talking about the need for communication. You're in a city rimmed with private schools, and you're facing this new world. So I think telling your story now matters more than ever. The story of the good things happening here, the story of a district shifting direction. Defining the success stories and the data points is critical, and telling a positive story is the key to bolster enrollment. The 7th Street Elementary piece in the Democrat Gazette I read like 3 times. And I thought, there's good things here, which is, I think you're doing 2 things in there that Arkansas is trying to do, and I think you're way ahead. You are, by saying to all the teachers, resign and reapply, you're doing something fundamentally key to education. You're now setting up a standard to try to put your best teachers in a school that's struggling, as opposed to the old thing where the best teachers end up at the best school. I think you're trying hard to dive into that. And then you're saying, well, we're going to give you a stipend if you want to come over to this school and help us figure this out. And I think that's been talked about in education in general for a long time. How do we get the better teachers in the schools that are struggling, and how do we financially incentivize teachers? So good for you. I think you're doing something there that many districts have not really just jumped on it the way you did. The other thing about the article that, as I read it the 3rd time, I thought was sort of interesting, it didn't really cover like why you're shifting gears at this school. it was like it just started with the superintendent's going to do some cool things at this school, which is a good story. But, you know, the reality is, you know, you have some low performance issues there that you have been very concerned about. And they reached a point where I think as a district, as a superintendent, as a board, you had to step in even before the school year ended. And again, good for you for diving in, because you're showing, I think, the courage to really step up and be transparent and say, we have problems here, we're going to try something different. And there are many districts that there's an unwillingness to do that. So I think it was a good story, but I think sort of that lead sentence of why you were doing it still got maybe lost a little bit in the mix. But I do think you have good things happening here, and now it's time to think about how to tell the story. Look, communication with your district, it's a fascinating discussion. Like earlier, if you change a phone policy, how do you make sure every parent knows it? If you change a dress code, what is the cost of the new outfit for each kid? That's going to have to be communicated. That's the old school board member and be like, okay, what's it cost per child? And is there going to be some community or group or corporation that would set up a scholarship to pay for the uniforms for families that really can't afford them? But then how are you going to manage that? Even if you have the money, you're going to need a staff member to sort of make decisions. And then those decisions very fast get complex. Well, you gave it to that kid, but you're not paying for my kid. So there's a bunch of, as the old school board member, you know, like there's a bunch of complexity, and I know the type of calls and emails you get from parents. I mean, you do, and you will. These issues are not simple, but you have changed this district. And I know I say that to you every time I'm in here, but you need to hear that from a third party, because I think you're doing some, and I'm really proud of sort of, you've come a long way when teachers used to say, no one's helping us with discipline. And tonight, you talked about all these key areas where you're looking at how that affects discipline. So again, just worth pausing. And I've shared with the superintendent a couple of ideas. I think you can use video in different ways to tell the story. I think you can chop video up different ways. You can use video in digital. But I do think you have a story to tell. So just recapping tonight, the four good habits: vision, expectation, defined goals, shared beliefs, less time on operations, more on policy. Easier said than done. Again, and then a culture of internal and external communications. So I'll close again. It's unbelievable, and I know that word is overused, the week-to-week crisis you have been dealing with. I mean, you know, I love this city, and by city I mean Little Rock and North Little Rock. I met my wife here, I had my kids here. I love this city. And the day of the tornado, I thought of you all, and I thought, oh God, I hope they haven't fully lost a school building, or I hope the kids are okay. But my first thought was like, boy, they're dealing with a lot already, and now we have this massive tornado skipping across the region. So if nothing else, your job is hard. You're doing the right thing. I think we can talk about communication. I think we're going to, if this guy ever gets a free time to sort of come back to all that free time you have, we're gonna come back, and we're gonna work with the senior staff to bring you back the long-term strategic goals. The metrics and the numbers have changed a little bit, but to put that in front of you, and again, to show the community. So that's it. I know it's late. I know you're hungry. And maybe there's a basketball game on something on TV you're trying to get home for, but that's what I got tonight. Yes.
I think you hit the nail on the head earlier when you said we've come a long way. We've got a teacher that was Teacher of the Year, her little cutouts right there, so that's what I'm pointing at. Teacher of the Year for the entire state. North Little Rock did that. So not only did we do that, but then we, the board members, won, what did we win? School Board of the Year?
Arkansas, yes. Ma'am.
So we did that under new leadership. We have done so much under new leadership. That's the difference.
And you did win school board.
And there's so many of us here that sits here that have bought into this. But then we had one comment at the beginning of your statement in your slideshow, not in North Little Rock. And that breaks my heart.
But that's why I remember that day so well.
It breaks my heart.
But that was early on in his tenure, okay?
Yep.
But, which was, I can't believe it was 3 years ago. But to your point, and that's why I brought it up tonight, but about expectations versus excuses.
Yep.
But look, School Board of the Year,
Yep.
Teacher of the Year,
Yep.
and, you know, you and I go way back, where I think recognition for school boards and districts, I'm going to be biased again, is I think urban districts have traditionally gotten less recognition.
Yeah.
And you know, we live in a state.
More blame.
Yeah, and on the other hand, the small rural districts seem to be, oh, everybody, you know, I mean, you and I could probably do 2 hours on that. But, as you just said, or blame. But now you're getting recognized, okay? So, I mean, I just think, keep pushing.
Keep on pushing.
Keep on pushing. And I do think, again, you got a story to tell. I'm lobbying the superintendent. We do some video and we tell that story. We do some things. And so, I know it's late.
We are a family.
What is wrong? Everybody's singing.
All my sisters,
Angela, I'm not
brothers, and me.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn.
Joe.
Do the, teach me this.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn.
Thank you.
We're officially over.
Covered a lot of ground.